All right, I came across this somewhat disturbing post, so decided to go ahead and do a video on it. Posted by Wall Street Silver. Biden and Kamala are expected to launch WW3 this weekend and authorize attacks deep into Russian territory. Secretary of State Blinken will announce tomorrow that the U.S. has given Ukraine the green light to strike deep into Russia using Western-made missiles. And so we have this interview with Putin discussing the implications of the country Ukraine sending missiles deep into Russian territory. Putin says that if Ukraine is successful in broadening their interior attack on Russia, it means that they have to have the help of the European Union or the United States, because the longer range missiles require the use of satellites, and Ukraine doesn't have the satellites to operate the trajectory of the missiles. So this interview is in Russian, but it's a very important interview because essentially in this short interview, Putin gives an ultimatum stating that if missiles do indeed wind up in the Russian interior, it would be implied that a Western satellite system was used, and it would mean that NATO or the United States, or just NATO including the United States, is responsible. Thus, it would mean an official attack by NATO on Russia, and then that would start a conflict. And all he says about his response to such an action is that he would take appropriate means to defend the country. He doesn't say or really imply about the use of nukes. For many, it would be considered the start of World War III. In an article published on Reuters, it's mentioned that our current U.S. Secretary of State, Abe Blinken, is actually in Poland. Poland is an adversary of Russia. They hosted the Secretary of State in Warsaw. So I'll read from the article. Poland added its voice on Thursday to calls to allow Ukraine to fire Western-supplied missiles deep into Russia as it hosted the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken for talks in Warsaw. Kiev has been pressing the Biden administration and other Western governments to authorize these strikes that it says will help counter Russia's relentless aerial attacks in Ukraine. We should continue to deliver advanced air defense to Ukraine and lift restrictions on the use of long-range weapons. Blinken, winding up a visit to Europe, said he had held extensive discussion with Ukrainian officials on Wednesday about how they see the war developing and what their needs are. What we learned from our Ukrainian partners will inform discussions that we're having with other allies and partners in days and weeks ahead as we work through and think through the coming months. So ominously, we wonder what's happening in the coming months. So I don't know Wall Street Silver's source, but if this statement is true, it means that Blinken is going to make his announcement from Warsaw, Poland. The way I've thought about this does come back to the U.S. selection process that we're undergoing. It implicates Kamala Harris. I considered a theory that the selection is not about Kamala getting her turn by the Democratic Party, but actually it's about the preservation of the old money, the generations of work by the Atlantic Council, the European Union, WEF, etc. Trump is considered to be a disruptor to the balance of power. He has plans to do things for the United States specifically, and that is against the outer, wider international order. So I believe Kamala is playing a role to use the United States Democratic Party in order to maintain the older world order. And so with this theory, because Kamala did not get the bump that she needed from the debate with Trump, the polls are likely going to continue to convey more certainty on the side of the Republicans. And so the last card that needs to be played to allow the older establishment to maintain its hegemony is to unite the country behind a conflagration, a war. So increased chaos of the whole world, that will create the mandate needed to maintain the current establishment to carry both the United States as well as the rest of the West and Russia through the war. And so in a sense, that would hurt the Republican Party's chances within the United States. Many conservatives have speculated about the war card being played at any point in the fall. It seemed almost inevitable with all the unbelievable events that have played out these last 3 years, but especially these last 6 months. So indeed, we have to make sure the 2024 election takes place, and that it takes place fairly. That is the primary goal for the version of reality where new ideas are allowed to enter the fray and the older order is disrupted. Of course, there may be a spiritual dimension to the situation that's truly behind the sides forming politically in these stances, as we know that if the older order wins, it tends to result in stagnation of progress and unneeded suffering. So I just wanted to share with you guys my thoughts. Take care.